I found out my family was selling my Christmas gifts on Facebook Marketplace. For Secret Santa, I gifted them screenshots of the sales. I've never seen so many people get a sudden headache at once. What's the price of your trust? In my case, it was exactly $4,189.55, the grand total of the presents my family had quietly sold on Facebook Marketplace over the last 2 years. This isn't just a story about betrayal, though. It's a story about algorithms. The digital ones that exposed their little scheme, and the familial ones I methodically programmed for the greatest lesson this family would ever learn. My name is Chloe Miller. I'm 29, a data analyst in Austin, Texas, and this is the story of how I used mathematics to dismantle and then rebuild my family, all starting with a simple Secret Santa exchange. You can pretty much divide the world into 2 camps: people who make Christmas shopping lists and people who embrace pure, unadulterated chaos. I, Chloe Miller, am the kind of person who creates a master Excel spreadsheet, complete with pivot tables for each relative, categorized by utility, durability, and satisfaction potential. Yes, I'm fully aware that officially puts me in the weirdo category. But hey, someone has to bring order to the universe. I was navigating the domain like a soldier on a mission, cross-referencing my phone every 5 steps. Friday, 6:43 p.m., precisely 7 days before Christmas, the sweet spot for finalizing purchases without getting caught in the stampede of last-minute desperados. My backpack was weighed down by my laptop. You never know when a spreadsheet needs an emergency update. And my noise-canceling headphones were blissfully blocking out the 10th rotation of Jingle Bell Rock. Is it too much to ask for a less predictable holiday playlist? Gift for Leo, iPad Pro, Model X29Z, Space Gray, 256 GB, max budget, $1 to $100. I muttered to myself, checking the price comparison I'd run between 3 different retailers. My younger brother, a perpetual engineering student, always claimed he didn't care for expensive gifts, while conveniently leaving the exact web page of the model he wanted open on his laptop. Subtlety was never a strong suit in the Miller family, with the possible exception of Grandma Rose, who could orchestrate a family coup so masterfully you wouldn't know you'd been dethroned until she was sitting on your throne. Back in my 500-square-foot apartment in South Congress, compact but meticulously organized with labels on literally everything, I fired up my laptop and opened Miller Christmas Ledger 2024.xlsx. Each tab represented a family member, each column a metric: projected usefulness, anticipated reaction, estimated durability, and my personal favorite, the CPMH, Cost Per Moment of Happiness Index. What? Everyone has their strange hobbies. Mine just happens to involve quantifying emotion. As I was keying in the details for Leo's iPad, my phone buzzed. Speak of the devil. Hey Leo, what's up? I tried to sound casual, frantically minimizing the spreadsheet as if he could see my screen through the phone. Data analyst's paranoia, I guess. Hey, Chloe, you get your Secret Santa yet? I drew Julia and have no clue what to get her. I stifled a laugh. If only he knew I had a dedicated subsheet for our sister's preferences, cross-referencing data from the boutiques she followed on Instagram. Oh, relax. You've still got time, I lied, glancing at the 7 shopping bags neatly stacked in the corner of my living room. But speaking of gifts, he went on, and I could practically hear his sly grin. That fossil watch with the blue face you were looking at seems like a pretty awesome gift for a dedicated brother, don't you think? I rolled my eyes so hard, I think I saw my own brain. How did he know? Was my browser history somehow being funneled into a shared family cloud? Or was I just that predictable? After hanging up with Leo, and promising to think about the watch, I returned to my sacred spreadsheet, now safely maximized. Mom, Eleanor Miller, 58, a retired teacher who swears she hates technology but has more apps on her phone than a teenager. For her, I'd chosen a top-of-the-line smartphone. She was always complaining her current one was slow while secretly crushing levels of Candy Crush. Dad, Robert Miller, 62, an engineer who thinks he understands the economy because he watches cable news. He was getting a smartwatch that tracks blood pressure. Maybe that would stop him from saying he's just fine when he's clearly stressed. Julia, 25, my younger sister, and self-proclaimed influencer on the rise, with her 3,847 followers, was getting a designer bag I spotted on her Pinterest board. Yes, my intel is thorough. Aunt Megan, the proud bachelorette at 50 with more dating app matches than the rest of us combined, would receive noise-canceling headphones, perfect for her endless video calls with potential suitors. And for Grandma Rose, the 75-year-old matriarch everyone underestimates, a simplified tablet, though I had a sneaking suspicion she was already day trading crypto without anyone knowing. Total invested in familial happiness, $5,117.92. I stared at the final number on the spreadsheet with a mix of pride and sheer horror. It was an absurd amount, I knew, but what else was I going to do with my money? My life was a neat cycle of work at the fintech firm, Netflix binges, and the occasional coffee with friends where we'd all complain about our lives. Gifts were my way of saying, hey, I pay attention to you, without having to, actually say it out loud. Why demonstrate affection with words? So inefficient when you can just buy something expensive and let the object do the talking. Seriously, who could have guessed that my spreadsheet obsession would lead me to uncover a family-run resale operation? And the worst part, you won't even believe what I found when I started digging deeper. Monday, 9:27 a.m., and I was already on my third cup of coffee at the offices of Synapse Financial, the fintech firm where I work as a senior data analyst. Our Austin headquarters has all the cliché amenities tech companies think boost productivity: a rock-climbing wall, a ping-pong table that collects dust, and an absurd number of office plants with their own names. The one next to my desk is named Gertrude, and I'm pretty sure she silently judges me whenever I sneak a piece of chocolate. Chloe, I need that segmentation report like yesterday. The voice of my boss, Michael, popped up on Slack, punctuated by 3 different emojis meant to soften the demand. Classic Michael. I'd just minimized 17 work-related tabs to do a quick browse on Marketplace. I needed a smart bulb to replace the one that had burned out in my bedroom. And that's when I saw it. A you might be interested in suggestion, featuring a photo of a watch, not just any watch. It was the exact fossil model with the blue face that I had given my father last Christmas. I leaned so close to the monitor my nose was nearly touching the glass. This couldn't be a coincidence. The photo even showed the minuscule scratch on the clasp I'd noticed when I bought it and managed to get a 12% discount for. The description read, "Worn only once, comes with original box and manual. 150 zeros, OBO. The seller? Rick P." I didn't know any Ricks in the family until I saw the seller's neighborhood, the Triangle, where my brother-in-law lives. My brother-in-law, whose Netflix account is probably under my dad's last name because, oh my God, he's selling the gift I gave my father. Over lunch, I barricaded myself in an empty conference room, my sad turkey wrap forgotten beside my laptop. I quickly created a dummy Marketplace profile under the name Jennifer Smith. Peak originality, I know, using a generic stock photo of a woman I found online. My co-worker Patricia walked past the glass door and waved. I shot back a tense smile, angling my body to block her view of the screen. What was I supposed to say? Oh, nothing, just stalking my entire family to see if they're hawking my expensive gifts online. Totally normal stuff. My method was straightforward. Search for every specific big-ticket gift I'd given over the past 2 years and see what popped up. I searched for the iPhone I gave my mom for her birthday. Nothing. Phew. The Calphalon nonstick cookware set for Julia's new apartment, and there it was. Full set, brand new in box, got as a gift, but I don't cook. $120. User, Julia M25. A knot formed in my stomach. Did I know my own sister so poorly that I was unaware she didn't cook? Or did she just not like my gift? In the next 40 minutes, I found 7 more items. The real gut punch? Leo's iPad, listed just 4 hours after the birthday lunch where he'd unwrapped it, hugged me and said, "It's exactly what I wanted, Chloe." It was in mint condition, earbuds still sealed in the box, listed for $950. My head was spinning. A colleague knocked on the door, asking if I was done with the room, as a meeting was scheduled. "Just 1 more minute," I called out, hastily closing the tabs. But that minute was all it took to see the latest listing. The smartwatch I had just purchased for my father for this Christmas, which was still sitting in my closet, waiting to be wrapped. How was that even possible? Unless I got home at 7:43 p.m., tossed my bag on the couch, something my meticulously organized self never does, and went straight for the freezer. Desperate times call for desperate measures. A pint of Ben & Jerry's Cherry Garcia, eaten directly from the carton. I changed into my favorite pajamas, the ones covered in pie symbols, and sat cross-legged on my bed, laptop open, hair thrown into a messy bun. Let's approach this scientifically, I muttered to my cat, Fibonacci, who was giving me that look of humans are so needlessly complex while grooming himself without a care in the world. I opened a new Excel file. If anything can calm my nerves, it's organizing chaos into perfectly aligned columns. Family Resale Analysis, DEX LSX. The first tab, Gift Inventory, listing every item I'd given in the last 24 months. The second, Marketplace Findings, complete with screenshots, sale prices, and the time elapsed between the gift being received and the listing going live. The third tab was Contradictory Financial Statements, a log of every time a family member complained about being broke, cross-referenced with their subsequent non-essential purchases. Mom can't afford a vacation due to a tight budget, versus Mom buys a Kate Spade bag 2 weeks after selling my gift. The numbers didn't lie. 41 gifts sold by 7 different relatives. The average time between receiving a gift and selling it, 13 days. The average resale return, 68.7% of the original value. The biggest offender? My dear little brother, Leo, who had successfully converted 94% of my gifts into cash. And here was the kicker. The correlation between a gift sale and the acquisition of a non-essential item was 92%. They weren't selling out of necessity. They were swapping my carefully selected presents for, what? New sneakers? A designer jacket? A night out at the bar? What exactly was my thoughtfulness worth? And more importantly, how had I never noticed this before? Was I so obsessed with data that I couldn't see what was right in front of me? What kind of analyst did that make me? I know what you're thinking. Chloe, you're not actually going to devise an elaborate algorithm-based revenge plot, are you? Well, let me tell you about the night I woke up at 3 a.m. with the perfect idea. I shot awake at 3:17 a.m. with an idea so fully formed it practically lit up the room. I leaped out of bed, startling poor Fibonacci who was asleep on my feet, and scrambled for my laptop like a woman possessed. "Fibo, I've got it!" I whisper-yelled at the cat, who blinked at me with an expression that clearly said, "You woke me up for this?" I pulled up my browser and started researching plummeting stocks. Not just any stock. I needed a specific one my predictive analysis model indicated would rebound in, say, 2 months. A company called Harvest Tech looked perfect. An agricultural tech firm that had tanked 47% after a minor data scandal, but which held promising patents and had a new board about to take over. The shares were trading at $12.43, but my models showed a high probability of them hitting $50 within 60 days. "It's basic math, Fibo," I explained, as the cat went back to licking a paw, entirely indifferent to my moment of evil genius. I could buy shares now, automate the process to add more with every new gift they sold, and then the family would eventually discover they could have made so much more if they'd just kept my gifts. That's when I realized I'd need their passwords. Not to mess with their accounts, of course, just to monitor the sales. Okay, maybe this was entering a gray area, ethically speaking, but my family had clearly set up a permanent camp in that gray area years ago. I started with the most obvious. My mom's password for everything was Julek 1964, her kids' initials plus her wedding year. My dad used Cowboys 62, his favorite team plus his birth year. Leo alternated between Skywalker and whatever his current girlfriend's name was, and Julia used Sunshine, followed by her birth year. Grandma Rose was smarter. Her password combined the name of her first cat with her childhood street address, but I only knew that because she'd asked me to set up her email. My family, as predictable as they were digitally insecure. For the next week, I was living a double life, a model data analyst from 9 to 5, and a clandestine family hacker by night. "Everything okay, Chloe? You look a little tired?" Michael asked on Wednesday after catching me yawning for the third time in a single meeting. Never better, just really getting into the holiday spirit, I chirped back, with probably a bit too much enthusiasm, because he gave me a look like I'd just sprouted a second head. If only he knew I'd spent the previous night coding a system that automatically monitored my family's marketplace accounts and converted their sales into a shadow stock portfolio. The system itself was elegant, if I do say so myself. Each family member would get a unique QR code. When scanned, it would pull up a personalized dashboard, a side-by-side comparison of the cash they made selling my gifts versus the money they would have had if they just held on to them. Every transaction was detailed, complete with photos. The main challenge was linking everything without tipping them off. I almost sent a system-wide test notification to my dad's phone on Friday night. I can just imagine that conversation. Hey Dad, just ignore that alert about the family betrayal tracker. It's, a new project for work. Haha. Luckily, I managed to cancel the push notification with milliseconds to spare. The night before the family gathering, I rehearsed my opening speech in the bathroom mirror. Dearest family, I've noticed an interesting pattern in your secondary market sales. Nope. Sounded like a corporate presentation. Surprise! I know you're all selling my gifts. Too blunt. This year, instead of material objects that bring fleeting joy. Ugh, I sounded like a cheesy self-help Instagram post. I splashed some cold water on my face. Who was I kidding? No amount of practice could prepare me for the moment I blew the lid off their entire resale scheme. It was like trying to prepare for a skydive by memorizing the laws of physics. At some point, you just have to jump and pray the parachute opens. And if it didn't, well, at least it would be one Christmas they'd never forget, right? Grandma Rose's house in a quiet suburb just outside Austin was a fascinating blend of museum-quality antiques and a Best Buy showroom. A 19th-century china cabinet stood proudly next to a smart speaker, and the traditional porcelain nativity scene shared mantel space with a Christmas tree, whose lights were synced to a Spotify holiday playlist. Chloe, darling, how is the smartest girl in the family? Grandma Rose enveloped me in a hug that smelled of lavender and impeccable red lipstick the moment I arrived at 7 p.m. on Christmas Eve. The living room was already buzzing. Aunt Megan was proudly showing off a new haircut. Gotta look good for my Hinge profile pics, honey. While Dad and Uncle Carl were already locked in a heated debate on the patio, a classic holiday cocktail of deeply held opinions and loosely held facts. My mother was commanding the kitchen like a 4-star general, and Julia was filming Instagram stories of the table setting. Holiday content strategy, Chloe. Get with the program. Leo, of course, arrived late, carrying a bottle of 2-buck chuck in a ridiculously fancy wine bag. Classic Leo. I saw it all through a new lens, picking up on details I would have previously missed. The new watch on my dad's wrist, funded by the Kindle I gave him. Julia's sparkling earrings, paid for by that designer bag she loved. I sat quietly, feigning interest in Aunt Megan's epic tale of her latest disastrous date, my hand nervously clutching the envelopes in my purse. My stomach was churning more than a Vitamix on high. The moment was getting closer. After dinner, we'd do the Secret Santa exchange, and then I would either change our family dynamic forever, or I'd just become the star of another chaotic holiday drama. Only time would tell. Specifically, about 2 hours, given the speed at which the Miller clan could devour a full Christmas dinner. I'll admit, in that moment, surrounded by my family with a stack of QR codes in my hand, I almost backed out. But then, you have no idea what happened the second the first phone scanned that code. Who's starting Secret Santa this year? Grandma Rose asked, after everyone had consumed second helpings of pie and at least 3 glasses of wine, except for her. She secretly swapped her wine for grape juice when no one was looking, another detail I'd only recently noticed. The living room seemed to shrink as overstuffed relatives occupied every available surface. Uncle Carl had already discreetly unbuttoned his pants, and my mom was trying to stifle a yawn behind a napkin. I'll start, Aunt Megan volunteered, always eager for the spotlight. She handed a large, awkwardly wrapped package to Leo. He tore it open with the excitement of a 5-year-old, revealing a Dallas Cowboys jersey. Wow, Aunt Megan, this is exactly what I wanted, he exclaimed, with the same over-the-top enthusiasm he'd used for my iPad, which he'd converted to cash before the box even had a chance to cool. I watched as other gifts were exchanged: a knockoff designer wallet that screamed Canal Street, a bath bomb set that was clearly a re-gift from last year, and a self-help book with the Goodwill price sticker still visible on the back cover. Finally, it was my turn. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the envelopes as I stood up. I took a deep breath, like I was about to plunge into icy water. This year, I wanted to do something different, I began, trying to keep my voice from betraying the chaotic symphony of nerves exploding in my chest. Instead of objects that, I almost said, you'd just sell, but I caught myself, that just take up space. I prepared something special for everyone. I handed out the gold envelopes, watching their confused expressions. "It's a QR code," I explained. "Just scan it with your phone." 7 pairs of eyes darted between me and the envelopes, while 7 brains were probably all thinking the same thing. Chloe has finally lost her mind and forgotten what a real present is. Leo, ever the tech-savvy one, especially when it involved turning expensive gadgets into quick cash, was the first to scan. I watched the exact moment the blood drained from his face. "What? What is this?" he stammered, looking up at me as if I'd just confessed to being an international spy. One by one, the others followed. The silence that fell over the room was so thick you could have carved it with the turkey knife. "Hold on," I murmured, pulling my laptop from my bag and plugging it into Grandma Rose's 55-inch smart TV, one of the few gifts from me she'd apparently kept. And there, on the giant screen for everyone to see, was my meticulously crafted dashboard, the Miller Family Resale Analysis, Christmas 2022 to 2024. The screen lit up with colorful charts, detailed tables, and for the grand finale, a scrolling carousel of their actual marketplace listings. "Dad, here's the watch I gave you last year, sold for $150 by a Rick P., who just so happens to use the same profile picture as my brother-in-law." I pointed. "Mom, this is the air fryer you swore was revolutionizing your kitchen, which you sold for $60 just 4 days later." My dad choked on his wine, sputtering a fine purple mist onto Grandma Rose's Persian rug. My mother suddenly became deeply fascinated by the intricate pattern on her empty glass. "Leo," I continued, feeling a bizarre cocktail of righteous satisfaction and absolute horror at my own actions. "You actually set a new record. Your iPad was listed 4 hours and 17 minutes after you opened it. I can still see the original gift wrap tape on the box in your photo." Julia started sniffling, staring at the ceiling as if looking for an emergency exit to heaven. Aunt Megan muttered something about needing fresh air and made a beeline for the patio. That's when I noticed something odd. Grandma Rose didn't look the least bit surprised. In fact, she had the faint, knowing smirk of someone watching a movie they've already seen. Wait a minute. Did she know? How long had she known? And why didn't she ever tell me? "Every QR code you just scanned is linked to an investment account I opened in your name," I explained, my voice steadier than I felt. 7 pairs of eyes were now locked on me, their expressions a mix of dread and utter disbelief. My system detected each time one of my gifts was sold, and it automatically invested the exact sale amount into shares of Harvest Tech. I took a sip of my wine, needing the liquid courage to see this through. As of this morning, those shares are up 327%. The total cash you made from selling my presents comes to $517.90. That same amount, when invested according to my algorithm, has generated a return of 21,895. A ripple of shock went through the room. My dad was visibly doing math in his head, likely comparing my numbers to his own retirement portfolio. Leo just looked like he'd been told the earth was flat and was starting to believe it. "So, you have 2 options," I said, pouring myself more wine with the casual air of someone discussing the weather. "You can cash out right now, which basically confirms that our relationship is purely transactional. Or you can leave the money in for another 30 days, when my projections show it's likely to increase by another 45%. I paused for dramatic effect. "But the second option comes with a condition: total honesty. I want to know from each of you exactly why you sold my gifts." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. It was my mom who finally broke it, her voice cracking in a way I'd rarely heard. "I use the money for my therapist," she confessed, staring into her empty glass. "I started 2 years ago after the incident." The incident, our family's delicate code word for the severe depression she fell into after retiring. "Your father thinks therapy is a waste of money for weak people, so I've been hiding the sessions." I looked at my dad, who was now studying the floorboards as if they held the secrets of the universe. "What about the new Kate Spade bag you bought last week?" I asked, confused. My mom just shrugged, a sad smile on her face. "Sometimes my therapist says I deserve to treat myself. It helps balance out all the hours I spend being told I'm useless because I don't have a job anymore." And just like that, the floodgates opened. One by one, the confessions started, shattering the perfectly curated image I had of my family like a dropped mirror. That silence in Grandma's living room, it was the sound of a family realizing none of their secrets were ever really secret. And if you think that was awkward, just wait until you hear what came next. "I've been paying for your Uncle Paul's treatment," my dad admitted next, his usually booming voice now quiet and strained. "He's been in a rehab facility for 8 months. Nobody knows, not even your mother." I glanced at Uncle Carl, who gave a slow, silent nod. Uncle Paul, my dad's absent brother, who we were all told was working on an oil rig up in Alaska. The missing piece of our family puzzle finally clicked into place. But the watch? Why sell that specific watch, the one I spent so long picking out? I asked, still trying to process it all. My dad shifted uncomfortably. "I needed the cash that specific week. The clinic raised their rates without warning. The watch, it was just there." Julia wiped away the mascara-laced tears streaking down her face. "I took out a loan for Ryan last year," she admitted, naming the ex-boyfriend we all despised. "He said it was to launch a startup, but he used it for online gambling. When we broke up, he just vanished. I'm paying $250 a month to a loan shark, Chloe. A real-life, sends-you-knife emojis loan shark." My eyes widened. My little sister, the girl of curated Instagram stories and perfect captions, was indebted to a loan shark? My life was suddenly feeling like a script for a low-budget Netflix drama. "Why didn't you ask for help?" I questioned. She let out a bitter laugh. "And ask Miss Perfect? The sister with the perfect job and the perfect life? Just so I could get a lecture on financial responsibility? No thanks." Leo was next, and he was surprisingly serious. "I'm trying to start a business," he revealed, refusing to meet my eyes. "It's a tech education platform for kids in underserved communities. I needed the seed money." I blinked, completely thrown. Leo, my party-loving, seemingly irresponsible brother, had a social impact project? "But why didn't you tell me? I would have invested in you directly." He sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "Because you would have turned it into another spreadsheet, Chloe. You would have analyzed every variable, pointed out every potential flaw until you'd talked me out of my own idea. You kind of have that effect on people." His words hit me like a physical blow. Is that how my own brother saw me? As a walking calculator, incapable of offering support without a full risk assessment. And the worst part was he wrong? I looked around at the familiar faces that now seemed like strangers, and it dawned on me that the variables I could never quantify were probably the most important ones of all. Grandma Rose's living room, which usually felt so spacious, now seemed impossibly small, cramped by the sheer weight of all these exposed truths. The air was thick with confessions, as if the words themselves were taking up space. I started, but my voice caught in my throat. I, the person who always had an answer, was speechless. Fibonacci would have been so disappointed in my lack of a logical next step. "I never knew," I tried again, "that you were all going through these things." How articulate, Chloe. All those years of higher education, and the best I could come up with was things to describe my family's cascading crises. "You all just seemed so okay," I continued, the words fumbling out. "At Sunday dinners, on FaceTime calls, it was always about plans and accomplishments, never about the struggles." My mom let out a soft, gentle laugh. "Honey, of course we did. You call once a week, every Sunday at 8 p.m. sharp, you talk for exactly 20 minutes, you ask how we are, and then you sidestep any real answer with, 'That's great. Well, it's a busy week. Talk to you later.'" When, exactly, were we supposed to schedule in our life crises? My face flushed with heat. It was so painfully obvious when she put it like that. Had I really automated my family relationships down to a predictable script? The gifts were my way of showing that I care, I confessed, the vulnerability in my own voice surprising me. I've never been good with words or big emotional displays. Numbers just make more sense to me than feelings. A single tear escaped, and I swiped it away, annoyed at my own lack of control. I chose every single gift so carefully. I would research for weeks, compare specs, hunt for the best price. It was my way of saying, "Hey, I see you. I'm paying attention." My voice cracked on the last part. Leo reached across the space between us and took my hand. "We know, Chloe," he said, his voice gentle, "but sometimes we need your presence more than your presence." I opened my mouth to argue, to explain that presence was an unquantifiable variable that gave me anxiety, something that couldn't be optimized, and then I realized that was probably the entire point. "Well?" Grandma Rose's calm, clear voice cut through the heavy emotional moment. "I suppose it's about time I weighed in, isn't it?" Every head in the room swiveled in her direction. She sat there, poised and perfect in her silk pantsuit. Not a single silver hair out of place, even after hours of family chaos. Chloe isn't the only one in this family with a tech secret. With an agility that defied her 75 years, Grandma Rose produced a brand new iPad from behind a couch cushion. I knew about all of the sales. In fact, I suggested a few of them. My jaw literally dropped. "Grandma!" was all I could manage as she tapped in her passcode with perfectly manicured nails. "Darling, do you honestly believe anything happens in this family that I don't know about?" She turned the screen so we could all see a spreadsheet. It was a detailed, color-coded, multi-tabbed masterpiece with pivot tables that would have made my boss, Michael, weep with joy. I've been tracking the family's finances for years. When someone has an emergency, I propose solutions. Sometimes, that solution involves selling an expensive gift that can be converted into a necessity. "But why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked, feeling a strange mix of profound admiration and sharp betrayal. Grandma Rose elegantly adjusted her reading glasses. "Because you, my dear, needed to learn that not everything in life can be calculated and predicted. A family is like an algorithm with intentional bugs. It functions not in spite of its flaws, but because of them." She smiled, that all-knowing smile that always made me feel like she held a piece of the universe's source code. "Besides," she continued, a mischievous twinkle in her eye, "I sold that pearl necklace you gave me 2 years ago to invest in Bitcoin. I've tripled my money." A moment of stunned silence was followed by a loud, uncontrollable laugh from Leo, which quickly spread through the room like a happy virus. Soon, we were all laughing, even me, though a part of my brain was screaming about crypto volatility and disproportionate risk for elderly investors. But for the first time in a long time, I shut the analyst down and just laughed. I laughed at the absurdity of it all, at my elaborate plan that revealed more about me than it did about them, and at the sheer irony that my grandmother was probably a better day trader than I was. "So," Grandma Rose said, wiping away a tear of laughter, "what are we doing with the investment money, Chloe? Are those 2 options still on the table?" All eyes turned back to me, but this time they weren't filled with fear or shame. They were filled with expectation, as if, somehow after everything, they still trusted my judgment. And surprisingly, that meant more to me than any spreadsheet ever could. People always say families are complicated, but nobody ever warned me that mine was basically an advanced calculus problem with no single solution. And the most surprising part? How much 1 month could completely change the entire equation. 1 month later, we were all gathered around the dining room table at my parents' house, the same table where we used to celebrate birthdays and good report cards. But today, instead of cake and casseroles, it was covered in laptops, tablets, and a daunting number of printouts. "First official Miller Family Financial Summit," read the makeshift banner Julia had created, and of course, posted to her Instagram story with the hashtag #MillerMoneyMoves. "Okay, to summarize," I said, trying to sound professional despite wearing jeans and an old band t-shirt, "the investments performed exactly as projected, and we now have a total of $25,188.75 to allocate." I looked around the table, still adjusting to this new family dynamic. Leo was taking notes in a journal, not scrolling through memes as I would have once assumed. My parents were sitting side by side, no longer pretending everything was perfect, but openly discussing how to restructure their household budget. I proposed the following split: 30% for a family emergency fund, 30% to pay off Julia's loan shark, 20% to seed Leo's business project, and the final 20% for Uncle Paul's continued treatment. "Just a suggestion," Grandma Rose interjected, chic as ever, as she navigated her iPad with the ease of a digital native. "Perhaps we could reserve 5% for an emotional intelligence workshop for Chloe." Everyone laughed, myself included, though I did discreetly add the idea to my mental to-do list. Did they have spreadsheets for tracking emotional growth? Probably not, and maybe that was the whole point. "But seriously," Grandma continued, "I'm proud of all of you, especially you, Chloe, for turning a crisis into an opportunity." I felt my cheeks get warm at the unexpected praise. "I just did what I know how to do. Analyze the data," I mumbled, suddenly finding the pattern on the tablecloth fascinating. "No," Grandma corrected gently. "You did something much harder. You admitted that not everything can be quantified." She was right, of course. She always was. The real investment that Christmas wasn't in stocks. It was in honesty. And the return on that investment felt far more valuable than anything a chart could ever show. Who would have thought that I, Chloe Spreadsheet Miller, would ever reach that conclusion? Certainly not Fibonacci, who would probably be disappointed by my newfound appreciation for non-numeric variables. "Happy birthday, Dad." I handed a simple envelope to Robert Miller 3 months later, during a Sunday barbecue in their suburban backyard. He raised an eyebrow, probably bracing for another expensive gadget that might or might not find its way to Marketplace. Instead, he pulled out a gift certificate for a 6-week artisan pasta-making workshop. "You're always talking about wanting to learn how to make that lasagna we had in Italy," I explained, watching his confused expression soften into something else. "It's for both of us, actually. I thought it could be, fun?" The word fun felt foreign and clunky coming out of my mouth, as if my internal operating system wasn't programmed to use it in a family context. My dad looked from the certificate back to me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw raw, unfiltered emotion in his eyes. "You're really going to take 6 nights off to get covered in flour with me?" he asked, a note of disbelief in his voice. I nodded, already mentally blocking out 6 Wednesday nights in my Google Calendar under the heading, Project, Carb Load, Do Not Schedule Over. He pulled me into a tight, lingering hug, the kind he used to give me when I was a kid, and came home with an A+ in math. Over the following months, my entire approach to gift-giving was recalibrated. For Leo, I became the first seed investor in his social enterprise, taking a minority stake and serving as his pro bono data consultant, a role he surprisingly accepted without a single eye roll. For my mom, I gifted a series of masterclasses with a local landscape photographer she'd secretly admired for years, a passion I only learned about during our new weekly chats, which now had no time limit and involved genuine questions. For Julia, I helped her build a professional media kit and business plan, transforming her hobby into a legitimate income stream that had almost paid off that loan shark, who, I was horrified to learn, did in fact use knife emojis in his collection texts. And for Grandma Rose, an advanced seminar on blockchain analytics and crypto trading, which she passed with higher marks than anyone else in her class. Apparently, some stereotypes are just begging to be demolished. 6 months after the Great QR Code debacle, as Leo dramatically and relentlessly insisted on calling it, we gathered at Grandma's house again for a 4th of July barbecue. Placed in the center of the coffee table, right next to the vintage family photos, was my gift to all of them, a digital frame connected to a new shared family system I'd built. It was no longer a tool for exposure, but a collaborative dashboard that everyone updated voluntarily. "Hey, Leo just posted an update," Julia exclaimed, pointing as a notification lit up the screen. He just signed a partnership with 3 middle schools for the tech program. A small round of applause went through the room as the frame displayed a little progress bar inching forward and a photo of smiling kids at computers. "And Mom just made her final car payment," Leo noted, raising his beer in a toast as another alert popped up. The system didn't just track financial wins. It showcased photos from important moments, birthday reminders, and even a countdown to Julia's graduation. She was officially back in college. You guys realize we're probably the only family in America that gets excited about updates to a shared spreadsheet, right? My dad commented, shaking his head with a grin. It's not a spreadsheet, Dad. It's an integrated personal data-sharing ecosystem with an intuitive user interface, I corrected on autopilot, before realizing he was teasing me. So, a glorified group chat, Leo ribbed, poking me in the side. I made a face at him, but I couldn't stop myself from smiling. We were weird, a family that turned a gift reselling crisis into a radical transparency experiment. But hey, at least no one was selling my presents on Marketplace anymore. We now had a dedicated family group chat for gifts from Chloe that we can't use, where items were traded internally. Progress, right? Sometimes, system optimization comes in the most unexpected forms, like learning to laugh at your own spreadsheets. I know. Who would have thought that Chloe Spreadsheet Miller would be making pasta from scratch with her dad on a Wednesday night? But believe me, that wasn't even the biggest transformation our family went through. Chloe Miller, family financial strategist. I looked down at my newly printed business card and felt a swell of pride. A year after the Christmas incident, I had spun my personal ordeal into a side hustle, helping other families get their finances in order without imploding their relationships. My tagline? Data with heart. It was incredibly cheesy, I know, but Julia swore it was authentic and shareable, and she apparently knew more about these things than I did. My life had changed in ways no predictive model could have ever forecasted. I still worked at the fintech firm, but my nights and weekends were spent running financial literacy workshops. Leo had finally graduated and scaled his social project into a legitimate nonprofit. Julia had found her calling in digital marketing and was now managing accounts for several small businesses, including my dad's new artisanal bakery. Yes, that pasta class had morphed into a full-blown sourdough obsession, and we now had a family micro-entrepreneur who specialized in focaccia. My mom was still in therapy, but now she went openly and even dragged my dad to monthly couples sessions, which he grumbled about beforehand but always seemed lighter after. Uncle Paul had finished his program and moved back, working part-time at the bakery while he got back on his feet. And Grandma Rose? Well, she had started an investment club with her bridge group, 5 women between the ages of 70 and 82, who now debated market trends over cards and coffee cake. The wolves of Wall Street should fear the golden foxes, she'd joke, adjusting her glasses to analyze another stock chart. As for me, I was finally learning that some of life's most critical variables can't be contained in the cells of an Excel sheet, though that didn't stop me from occasionally trying. You promised you wouldn't turn this into a data analysis problem. Leo's voice cut through the living room on a particularly tense Sunday, when our newly established family harmony faced its first major stress test. It turned out my brother had used a portion of his nonprofit's funding to help Uncle Paul with a previously undisclosed debt. I, naturally, believed this warranted a full risk-impact analysis, complete with 3-year projections and alternative scenarios. It's just a basic contingency plan, I argued, holding my laptop up like a shield. Both of you, that's enough. My mother's voice sliced through our argument with a level of authority we hadn't heard since we were teenagers. Chloe, not everything needs to be quantified. Leo, transparency means you consult the family before you reallocate shared funds. We both froze, like kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. My dad, who would normally have vanished at the first sign of conflict, actually stepped in. We're going to handle this like adults. Leo, you'll explain your reasoning. Chloe, you'll put the spreadsheet away, and everyone is going to listen without interrupting. I exchanged a look of sheer disbelief with Julia. Since when did our parents mediate conflict instead of just changing the subject to the weather? But it was Grandma Rose who truly saved the day, emerging from the kitchen with a tray of warm, gooey brownies. Family system undergoing a debug, she announced, placing the tray on the coffee table. The American Protocol for Conflict Resolution requires a significant chocolate-based intervention. I couldn't help but smile. Grandma had seamlessly integrated tech jargon into her vocabulary, just as I was, slowly, painfully, learning not to turn every problem into a data set. We sat there, eating brownies, and for the first time, We discussed a financial problem without charts or accusations. Leo explained his logic. I voiced my concerns, and together, we found a middle ground. The Miller family algorithm was far from perfect, but at least now it had a built-in crash recovery system. And brownies. Lots of brownies. Secret Santa time, Grandma Rose announced cheerfully the following Christmas Eve. An entire year had passed since my QR code expose. I glanced around nervously, half expecting some residual trauma to surface, but everyone just seemed relaxed. We did things a little differently this year, Grandma explained. Everyone wrote down something they truly needed or wanted, and the gifts were chosen from that list. It was a simple, yet revolutionary concept for our family. Direct communication instead of algorithmic guesswork. Works better than predictive analytics, doesn't it, Chloe? She teased, winking at me. The gift exchange was shockingly meaningful. Leo got a scholarship for a nonprofit management course he'd been wanting to take. Julia received a professional lighting kit to upgrade her video content. My parents got a weekend getaway to a food and wine festival in the Hill Country, something they'd never have bought for themselves. When it was my turn, I was genuinely curious. What did my family think I needed? Uncle Paul came forward with a bulky, awkwardly wrapped package. This is from all of us, he said. We made it together. Inside was an album, not a digital one, but a real, physical scrapbook with thick pages. Each page was filled with photos of my family using, enjoying, or celebrating something I had given them. My mom cooking with the one pan that wasn't sold. My dad wearing the new watch I'd picked out for him after the incident. Leo teaching kids with tablets similar to the ones I'd gifted. Julia creating content with the camera from her last birthday. Tucked between the photos were small, handwritten notes explaining the hidden context I'd never had. I sold the Kindle, but I used the money for medicine when I got sick and didn't want to worry you. I traded the smartwatch for a new printer that I still use for work every day. On the final page was a recent photo of all of us, laughing around Grandma's table, looking at our honesty dashboard on the digital frame. Beneath it, in Grandma Rose's elegant script, was a single sentence. Some algorithms can't be calculated. Those are the most valuable ones. I felt something warm and wet on my cheek, and it took me a moment to realize I was crying. Me, Chloe Miller, data analyst, spreadsheet creator, formula programmer, crying over a scrapbook. There was no Excel function to quantify this feeling, and for the first time in my life, that felt absolutely perfect. If someone had told me 3 years ago that a family crisis over resold Christmas gifts would end with all of us happier and more connected, I would have demanded to see the data to back it up. But just wait until you hear about my next challenge. So, you're the famous Chloe. Henry's mother greeted me, her handshake a little too enthusiastic. We finally get to meet the woman who turned data analysis into family therapy. I smiled politely, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. We were at a trendy coffee shop in East Austin for my first official meet the family moment with my new boyfriend. Henry, a software developer I'd met at a charity hackathon, gave my hand a supportive squeeze under the table. I couldn't help but observe the dynamics of his family with my analyst's eye. Mr. Davis, he insisted I call him Gerald, clearly held the financial reins, cutting his wife off when she mentioned wanting a new car. Henry's younger sister, Madison, rolled her eyes at nearly every comment her father made while sneakily checking her phone. The mom, Claudia, filled every silence with cheerful chatter, carefully avoiding any topic that might lead to actual conflict. My mind was already categorizing behaviors, identifying communication bottlenecks, and building flowcharts. I almost suggested a shared budget spreadsheet to solve the college allowance issue Madison had brought up when Henry squeezed my hand again, this time a little harder. Chloe developed this amazing system for her own family, Henry explained, trying to frame me in the best possible light. But the cool part is how she gets that every family has its own, unique operating system. Isn't that what you call it, babe? Babe. That was a new variable, one that made my stomach do a pleasant, illogical flip. I nodded, suddenly aware that I was about to start offering solutions to problems I didn't remotely understand. I took a deep breath and decided to do something radical. Just listen. No analysis, no suggestions, no mental spreadsheets. Just exist in the moment, observing the beautiful, messy, imperfect system of the family in front of me. It was a new approach, more qualitative than quantitative, and it felt surprisingly liberating. Maybe not every system needed immediate optimization. Sometimes, just understanding how it worked was a victory in itself. The company is folding. The simple statement from my dad dropped like a bomb in the middle of our Sunday lunch, causing everyone to freeze, forks hovering midway to their mouths. The construction firm where he had worked for over 20 years was filing for bankruptcy, a casualty of the economic downturn. He continued eating calmly, as if he'd just commented on the weather, but I saw the tight set of his jaw, the way he avoided making direct eye contact with any of us. In the past, this news would have been a closely guarded secret until it spiraled into an unmanageable crisis. Now, just 3 days after he found out, my dad was sharing it openly. "What's the plan?" I asked on instinct, my hand already reaching for my phone to open a notes app. It was my default defense mechanism. Turn a crisis into actionable items, a problem into a project. But before I could type a single bullet point, my mom placed her hand over mine. "Not today, Chloe," she said softly. "Today is just for processing. The plan can wait until tomorrow." I looked around the table and saw everyone nodding in agreement. Leo offered Dad more salad. Julia casually mentioned she had a few contacts in his industry she could reach out to. Grandma Rose simply refilled my father's wine glass without a word. It was then that I realized something fundamental. Not everything in life needs, or can have, an immediate solution. Some variables need to be absorbed. Some problems require emotional processing time before practical action. For someone used to jumping straight to the solutions column, it was a revelation. The next day, when we gathered to discuss options, everyone came prepared. Leo had a list of startup incubators, Julia had marketing ideas for the bakery, my mom had a revised household budget, and I had a full financial transition plan. But the most surprising person was my dad, who arrived with his own presentation, a business plan to scale his baking hobby into a full-time venture. "I thought about it all night," he explained, a spark in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. "Maybe this is the push I needed to finally do what I actually love." Like a family of unpredictable self-learning algorithms, we were all evolving, adapting to new inputs, and producing the most unexpected outputs. 76 years young, Grandma Rose proclaimed, looking regal in a navy blue dress as she blew out the candles on a cake decorated with a Bitcoin symbol in gold icing. Julia's idea, obviously. We were all crowded into her condo, now outfitted with smart speakers in every room and a high-tech massage chair where her old rocking chair used to be. The traditional decor now lived in perfect harmony with modern tech, much like Grandma herself, who now seamlessly alternated between knitting and tracking the stock market on her tablet. "Dear Grandma," I began, feeling as nervous as a kid at a school recital, "to celebrate your wisdom and your incredible ability to innovate, we prepared something special." I handed her an envelope containing tickets to Portugal, not just a standard vacation package, but a personalized cultural and culinary journey, including a visit to the small village her own grandparents had emigrated from. It was a group gift, funded by all of us through a GoFundMe that Leo had organized. Later that evening, Grandma called me out to her balcony. "You know, Chloe," she said, looking out at the city lights, "I am so incredibly proud of your QR code plan, as your brother insists on calling it." I frowned, confused. "But I thought you disapproved of all the exposure and the manipulation." Grandma let out a musical laugh. "Disapprove? Darling, I practically gave you the idea." I stared at her, completely lost. "Remember when I told you the story about how your grandfather and I used to handle our financial disagreements? About the importance of transparency?" I tried to recall the conversation from months before that fateful Christmas. "Are you saying you wanted me to deliberately start a family crisis?" Grandma gave an elegant shrug. "Let's just say I planted a seed. You watered it magnificently." She smiled, enigmatic as ever. "Sometimes you need a short circuit to reboot a system that's no longer working." I looked at my grandmother in a new light. All this time, I thought I had engineered a revolution, when really I was just executing a script she had written long ago. "Grandma, you're an evil genius," I murmured in awe. She winked, adjusting the authentic pearl necklace I'd recently given her, which, to my knowledge, had not yet been converted into crypto assets. Don't be dramatic, dear. I'm just a systems analyst for families. Meeting your boyfriend's family is terrifying, but finding out your own grandmother masterminded your big reveal years in advance? That's a plot twist. And you won't believe what happened by year 3 of our new family operating system. Welcome to the 3rd annual Miller Family State of the Union. Julia raised a glass of sparkling wine, beaming at her phone, which was propped up to capture the whole family gathered in our parents' new home. Smaller than their old one, but cozier, with the professional-grade kitchen my dad had always dreamed of for his expanding bakery. Don't forget to use the hashtag MillerUpdate2027, my sister instructed, now a respected social media manager with a full client roster and 0 loan shark debt. Leo, now the executive director of his tech nonprofit, had just announced they'd received a major international grant. My parents, who seemed 10 years younger since the job loss crisis, shared that their bakery, the Miller's Rise, had just been featured on a major food blog. Uncle Paul, 3 years sober, proudly showed off pictures of his new apartment. "And you, Chloe?" asked Grandma Rose, who had just returned from her 2nd international trip of the year, this time to Japan, a country she decided to visit after accidentally binge-watching an entire anime series. It's a long story. "Well," I began, adjusting my new glasses. Aside from my work at the fintech firm, my family financial strategy consultancy now has 16 regular clients. I paused, that familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach, the one that still showed up whenever I shared personal news. "And Henry and I are moving in together." A chorus of "oh" and "finally" erupted from around the table, making my cheeks burn. After 2 years of dating, my family still reacted to our milestones like we were characters in a rom-com. "But more importantly," I continued, eager to shift the focus, "I've finally developed the Family Dashboard app for your phones. You're all the exclusive beta testers, of course." I passed around QR codes. Yes, the irony was not lost on me, so they could all download the application. It didn't just track financial metrics anymore. I had added a happiness index, a family dinner counter, and a photo highlights reel. It was technology and emotion, finally integrated, much like the person I was learning to become. "Did you seriously create a spreadsheet to name our new cat?" Henry stared at me, his expression a perfect blend of disbelief and adoration. I proudly displayed my laptop screen, where a complex matrix was comparing 16 potential feline names based on criteria like ease of pronunciation, nickname potential, resonance with current meow, and my personal favorite, compatibility with Fibonacci, should they ever meet. We had been living together for 6 months in a new apartment in Zilker, and had just adopted a black kitten with a white patch on his chest that looked uncannily like a mathematical integral symbol. It was clearly meant to be. "You have to admit that Pythagoras is demonstrably superior to Fluffy," I argued, pointing to the undeniable data on the screen. Henry just laughed, shaking his head as he wrapped his arms around me from behind. "What am I going to do with you, Chloe Miller?" he murmured, kissing my neck. "Love me in spite of my spreadsheets?" I suggested, tilting my head. "Love you because of your spreadsheets," he corrected. That was why it worked. He didn't try to change my analytical core. He just helped me balance it. Pythagoras, yes, I won that debate, let out a small meow from across the room, seemingly in agreement. My family, too, was in a state of constant evolution, with its own bugs and feature updates. Leo had finally, officially, told everyone he was dating his co-founder at the nonprofit, something we'd all known for a year. Julia's personal brand now oscillated between Zen minimalist and maximalist fashionista, but she now budgeted for both phases. My parents, after 4 decades together, seemed to be rediscovering each other, especially since they'd started taking salsa dancing classes on Thursday nights, a mental image I was actively trying to block. Even Grandma Rose had evolved, now running an investment club for women over 60 called the Dow Jones Dames. Leo's idea, of course. As for me, I was still fighting the urge to chart everything, still working on verbalizing feelings instead of just quantifying them. But I now understood that the debugging process is endless. There's no final version, only constant updates. And surprisingly, I was okay with that. family photo time, Julia announced, setting up her phone on a tripod in Grandma's backyard, where we were celebrating another Christmas. The condo was now filled with more framed photos than expensive trinkets, a subtle but profound shift in our matriarch's priorities. Pythagoras and Fibonacci had become unlikely best friends after Henry and I got married in a small ceremony 3 months prior, and the two cats were now vying for a spot on Grandma's lap. I looked around, my analytical gaze now softened with affection. Leo and his husband, Gabriel, were excitedly planning their next trip. My parents were holding hands, quietly, like teenagers. Julia was checking the lighting for the perfect shot while her new boyfriend, Miguel, a chef she met while doing a story on my dad's bakery, The Universe Has a Weird Sense of Humor, made colorful cocktails for everyone. Uncle Paul was proudly showing off photos from his new job as a peer counselor at a rehab facility. And Grandma Rose was exchanging a knowing look with me from across the yard. "Grandma has an announcement," Leo declared suddenly, clapping his hands to get everyone's attention. Grandma Rose stood up, gently shooing the cats from her lap. "My dears," she began, her serene voice commanding immediate respect. "I've decided it's time to share not just my wisdom, but a little of my good fortune." She held up her tablet and displayed a graph that made everyone's eyes go wide. "My cryptocurrency investments have performed substantially, and I've decided to distribute a portion of the profits to each of you to start something new." A wave of stunned silence was broken by Miguel dropping a glass with a dramatic shatter. "But Mom," my dad protested, "you don't have to do that." She cut him off with an elegant gesture. "Robert, at 77, I can do whatever I please with my money, and I want to see you all chase your dreams while I'm still here to cheer you on." She looked directly at me. "Chloe taught me that the return on some investments can't be charted. They're measured in smiles, in projects launched, in lives changed." As Julia set the camera's timer and we all rushed into place, I noticed the digital frame on the shelf, the one that started it all. It was no longer displaying financial data. Instead, it cycled through a slideshow of our lives. Leo teaching kids to code, Dad holding up a perfect loaf of bread, Mom at her first photography exhibit, Julia accepting a marketing award, Henry and me on our wedding day. It was a visual compilation of our shared algorithm. The timer beeped, we all smiled, and the flash captured the moment. A second later, the frame flickered, displaying a new, custom message. "Some algorithms can't be calculated. These are the most valuable ones." I looked at Grandma, who gave me a conspiratorial wink. Of course she had hacked my system. She probably had Leo help. I felt Henry's arms wrap around my waist, and I leaned back into his embrace, a sudden wave of emotion washing over me. It was wild to think that just 3 years ago, my grand plan had been a cold, calculated revenge scheme built on data points, charts, and those infamous QR codes. And the result of all that logic? A family that was more honest, more connected, and genuinely happier than my wildest projections could have ever shown. No spreadsheet could have forecasted this outcome. No algorithm could have possibly charted this trajectory. And for the first time in my life, I was perfectly, completely at peace with that beautiful mathematical imprecision.